By selling a product, a variable cost of the product is covered first, and the contribution margin will remain. So whenever you sell a product, the difference between the selling price and the variable cost, once you cover the variable cost, we will start talking about the contribution margin. The contribution margin is used first to cover the fixed expenses, and then whatever remains goes towards profit. So the sales revenue that we have will cover the variable expense, and you're left with contribution margin. This contribution margin will cover the fixed expenses, and from then on, you will start making profit. If the contribution margin is not sufficient to cover your fixed expenses, a loss occurs for the period. If enough units can be sold to generate the total fixed expenses in contribution margin, then all of the fixed expenses will be covered and the company will break even for the period. The contribution margin accumulates after the sales of each product. And as I said, it will start covering the fixed expenses for that period. The break-even point is when both variable and fixed expenses are fully covered. So we have the fixed expenses and we have the variable expenses to cover before starting to make money. Therefore, the break-even point is calculated as follows. It is the unit sales to break even is equal to, as I said, in the denominator, we have the unit selling price minus the variable cost. So the difference between the selling price and the variable cost is the contribution margin. So once we divide the fixed expenses by the contribution margin, we will get to the unit needed to break even. This level of sales at which the profit is zero, again, we call it the break-even point. Once the break-even point has been reached, net operating income will increase by the amount of the unit contribution margin for each additional unit sold. So in other terms, once we get to the break-even point, sales volume will increase, the net operating income will increase with it hand in hand. So instead of unit sales, we may want to know what dirham sales are needed to break even. So how much we need to sell in terms of money to break even. So all we have to do at that point in time, we calculated the unit sales to break even, and we know how much is the unit price. So by multiplying the unit sales to break even by the unit price, we get the dirham sales in terms of money, how much we need to sell in order to break even. Looking at the chart, you see where's the break even. At this level, we have the fixed cost. Once you go beyond the fixed cost, you have already covered here the variable cost. Once we get to the point where the variable cost and the fixed cost, both of them cumulative, are covered, from that point on, as the sales volume will increase, my profit will increase as well, hand in hand. Knowing that everything is covered, my net operating income, as we said, will start to increase hand in hand. Let's go into a numerical example to explain a little bit about the break-even point. Going back to our previous example of the acoustic concept. How many units does Danny need to sell per month in order to break even? For this, Danny has decided to sell his speaker for 1,000 dirham. The cost of the speaker, the variable cost, which is the raw material or the cost of manufacturing and buying that speaker, is 600 dirham. The fixed expense of the month, covering the rent, the salaries, and the advertising, will add up to 130,000 per month. So, moving to the formula of the unit sales to break even, fixed expenses over unit sales minus unit variable cost. So we have the 1,000 in terms of selling price, the 600 being the cost to produce. The difference between them is the contribution margin. The fixed expense for the month being 130,000, so 130,000 divided by the 400 will be 325 units. So for Danny, he needs to sell on monthly basis 325 units to break even, to cover his fixed expenses and his variable expenses. What about the break-even point in sales dirham? So as we said, we have unit sales to break even being 325 units. We have the selling price of each acoustic speaker being 1,000. So Danny will have to sell around 325,000 dirham per month to break even. Any sales beyond the 325,000 will be profit generated to his business. On a simple sheet, you can simply look at it in the time frame, which can be monthly or it can be yearly for all that matters. So the average price of each product or service sold is 1,000 dirham. The average cost, or it can be a service that you need to deliver or to produce, it is 600 dirham. The fixed costs for the month for Danny's operation is 130,000. We have the total sales needed being 325 units and 325,000 dirham. Look at this point, which is the percentage of price that is profit. We have the 600 being the cost, and we have the 1,000 being the price. When divide the 600 over the 1,000, we have 60%. That's 60% of the sales price of the speaker is cost. So 60% is cost. The remaining 40% will be considered as the profit generated from the sale of the speaker. So we have for Danny, 40% is the percentage being the profit from the sale of each speaker at 1,000 with a cost of 600.